For 400 years, the conquered council had only one word for humanity in its records: harmless. They had measured us, weighed us, watched us smile across 10,000 negotiations, and they had decided we were soft. They were not wrong about the smile. They were wrong about what the smile was for. This is the account of the day one human stopped smiling, and an entire galaxy finally learned the difference between a creature that cannot hurt you and a creature that has only ever chosen not to. I am the one who has to write it down, so let me begin where it actually begins, which is not the beginning at all. It begins with her face. I have watched a great deal in my long service as a cataloger of the Sarun. I have recorded the death of a son and the birth of a treaty and the small, dull arguments of 17 species over the ownership of a single asteroid. I have a precise memory, which is the only gift my people are truly known for. We do not build. We do not fight. We watch and we sort and we remember, and we are very good at it. And of all the millions of images I carry, there is one I cannot file. It refuses to sit in any drawer I open for it. It is the image of Mara Quinn's smile leaving her face. Now, you must understand what that meant to me, because at the time it meant nothing and everything at once. I had known the human liaison for 9 of her years. I had catalogued that smile so many times that it had stopped being information and become furniture, a thing always present, like the hum of the lattice in the walls. She smiled when the Kinil delegation insulted her homeworld. She smiled when the council seated her at the lowest tier, below even the methane breathers who could not speak the common tongue. She smiled when they cut Earth's resource allotment for the 3rd year running and told her, with the gentle contempt one shows a pet, that humanity should be grateful to sit at the table at all. And so I had written in my official record the line that I now wish I could burn out of every archive in the galaxy. I had written, "The human expresses contentment. The species is pacified." I was a fool. We were all fools. But I at least had the records to prove how thoroughly. The moment I cannot file happened in the Great Chamber, under the blue light of the Convocation Dome, with 200 delegates present and the full council seated on the high tiers. Mara Quinn stood at the speaking floor alone, as humans were always made to stand alone. And as High Speaker Oren finished delivering the news, and I will come to that news, I promise you, but not yet, I watched something happen to her face that I had no category for. The corners of her mouth, which had held their gentle upward curve through 9 years of insult, came down. That was all. That was the entire event. A small muscular motion lasting less than 2 of her heartbeats, and yet I felt the chamber change temperature. I felt 200 delegates who could not have told you why suddenly grow very still, the way the small animals on 100 worlds grow still when a shadow passes over the grass. The methane breathers stopped venting. The Kinil, who never stopped talking, stopped talking. Somewhere in the high tier, a counselor knocked over a cup of liquid nutrient and did not reach to write it. We did not have the word yet for what we were looking at. We would learn it within the hour. But in that first instant, all I could record, all my precise and famous memory could produce, was a single useless sentence that I did not say aloud and have never erased. The smile is gone, and I'm afraid. To understand why a single human face emptying of expression made an ancient and armored civilization hold its breath, you must go back. You must go back past the news, past the chamber, past the smile itself, to the very first entry in the human file. So let me take you there because I wrote it, and I remember every word. The humans arrived late. The Conquered was already old when their first vessel limped out of a botched jump on the edge of the veil and announced itself, with what I can only describe as catastrophic optimism, as a delegation of peace. They were small. They were fragile. They breathed a thin and corrosive air, and they died of almost everything. Their ships were held together with what our engineers swore was hope and adhesive. The Vorth ambassador, looking at the schematics of the human craft, laughed for a full rotation and had to be sedated. We catalogued them quickly because they were easy to catalog. Soft skin, no natural weapons, short lives, a baffling tendency to apologize. They smiled constantly, and our xenopsychologists, I among them, read that smile as a submission display, a baring of harmless flat teeth that meant asterisk please, I'm no threat, please let me stay. Every species has such a display. The Kinil flattened their crests, the Sarun lower the eye, the humans, we decided, smiled. So we let them stay, the way one lets a stray creature stay because it is small, and it is warm, and it cleans up the scraps. We gave them the lowest seat and the worst allotment and the most thankless work. And here is the part that I, the cataloger, missed entirely, the part that haunts me now in the long dark of my recording cells. They took the thankless work, and they smiled, and they said thank you, and then they did the work better than anyone in the history of the Conquered had ever done it. You see, the galaxy runs on the lattice. I have not explained the lattice, and I should, because everything turns on it. The lattice is the network that binds the Conquered, every jump gate, every translation matrix, every breath of communication between 1,000 worlds passes through it. It is older than my species. It was built by the precursors, who are gone, and no one alive fully understood it. We maintained it the way a child maintains a machine left by a dead parent, with reverence and fear and a great deal of guessing. When the lattice faltered, ships were lost. When the lattice failed, worlds went dark. And the lattice had been faltering, quietly, for longer than any of us admitted, because admitting it would have meant admitting that none of the great old species knew how to fix it. The humans were assigned to lattice maintenance because no one else wanted it. It was dull, it was endless, and it was, everyone agreed, beneath a real species. We gave the dying machine to the dying race and felt rather generous about it. I want you to hold that image. The smallest, softest, latest arriving species in the Conquered handed the failing heart of the entire galaxy as a kind of insult, and smiling about it. Mara Quinn ran that maintenance corps for 9 years. I knew her as the liaison who sat at the low tier and absorbed contempt with a pleasant face, and that was all I thought she was. I did not know, none of us knew, that in those same 9 years, she and her quiet, unglamorous, endlessly patient corps had done something the precursors' children had failed to do for 400,000 years. They had not just maintained the lattice. They had learned it. Line by line, gate by gate in the dark without credit, because someone had to, and because the alternative was watching worlds go dark, and humans, it turns out, cannot stand to watch a thing die if there is any way at all to keep it alive. That is the detail I keep returning to. Not their cleverness, though they were clever. Not their endurance, though they endured. It is that they fixed the galaxy's heart in secret and let us go on believing they were pets, because correcting us would have been unkind, and being right mattered less to them than being gentle. We mistook the gentleness for the whole of them. We catalogued the smile and missed the creature behind it entirely. Mara had a habit I recorded 100 times and understood not at all. When a delegate spoke cruelly to her, and they did daily with the casual cruelty of the secure, she would pause before answering. A small pause, half a breath. And in that pause her eyes would do a quick, flat, sweeping thing, left to right, taking in the whole chamber, every exit, every delegate, every weapon on every hip. Then the smile would return and she would answer softly and everyone would relax. I filed that sweep as asterisk anxiety behavior. I wrote that the human scanned the room because she felt unsafe. I know now what I was actually watching. I was watching a predator that had been raised among prey learn, very young, to count the threats in a room and then decide, every single time in half a breath, to let them live. The smile was not the absence of the hunt. The smile was the hunt, leashed, by a will so total and so quiet that an entire galaxy mistook the leash for the nature of the animal. I told you this account does not begin at the beginning. Here is the truth of it. There was no moment the predator awakened. The predator was never asleep. It had simply been smiling. But the Conquered did not know that. The Conquered knew a pleasant, useful, harmless creature at the low tier, and the Conquered, in its certainty, was about to make the single worst decision in the recorded history of the galaxy. It was about to find out what was behind the smile by taking away the only reason the smile had ever stayed in place. It begins with her face, but it ends with ours. The Severeth were the ones who did it, and I want to be fair to them in this record, because fairness is the only dignity a cataloger can offer the dead. The Severeth were not monsters. They were proud, and they were frightened, and frightened pride is the oldest engine of ruin there is. The Severeth bordered the human reconstruction zones along the outer veil, the broken old systems where the lattice was thinnest, and the human core did its most dangerous work. For years the Severeth had watched humanity expand, not through conquest but through repair. A dead gate brought back to life, a dark world reconnected, a starving colony fed by a quiet convoy that asked for nothing in return. And the Severeth, who measured strength the way most species do, in fleets and fear, looked at this and saw weakness wearing the mask of generosity. A strong species takes. A strong species demands tribute for its protection. A species that gives and asks nothing must be soft, must be afraid, must be ripe. So the Severeth decided to test the softness. They chose a human vessel called the Meridian Asterisk, a hospital ship, unarmed, running a relief route through a system the humans had reconnected 2 years before. It carried doctors and engineers and a school's worth of children being evacuated from a failing colony. The Severeth struck it in the dark, far from any witness, betting that humanity would do what soft things do: grieve, protest, file a complaint with the council, and learn its place. I have the Severeth Strike Commander's own log recovered later. He wrote before the attack, "They will weep, and weeping is not war. Let them weep." He was not wrong about the weeping. Humans wept for the Meridian Asterisk on every world they held. He was catastrophically, civilization-endingly wrong about everything that came after the tears. The news reached the council 4 cycles later. High Speaker Oran convened the full convocation, and Mara Quinn was summoned to the speaking floor to be informed, formally, of the loss of her people. And the council had already privately decided, to be reminded that the proper response was restraint. There was even a prepared statement. I saw the draft. It urged the human liaison to trust the council's measured process and to refrain from destabilizing escalation. They were going to ask the species, whose children had just been murdered, to please not make a scene. She walked to the floor the way she always did, small and unhurried, hands loose at her sides. The chamber was full. Every tier was occupied. The Severeth delegation was present, seated high, watching with the careful neutrality of a species that has done a thing and is waiting to see if it will be made to answer for it. I had a clear line to her face. I was, after all, the cataloger. My duty was to watch. High Speaker Oran delivered the news in the formal mode. In the round, ringing tones the chamber was built to carry. He confirmed the loss of the Meridian. He confirmed the loss of all aboard. He expressed the council's measured sorrow. And then, because Oran was Oran and could not help himself, he added the line that I believe history will remember as the moment the old galaxy ended without knowing it. He reminded the human liaison that the conquered valued her people's famous patience, and trusted that humanity would, as ever, choose the gentle path. And I watched the smile leave Mara Quinn's face. I have already described the motion, the corners of the mouth coming down, the small muscular event. What I could not describe before because you did not yet know enough to feel it was what filled the space the smile left behind. Because a smile is not just a shape. A smile is a thing you hold up, a thing you keep between yourself and the world. And when Mara Quinn let hers fall, what the chamber saw underneath was not grief. We had braced for grief. We knew grief. Every species has it. This was not that. What we saw was attention. I do not have a better word, and I have searched. The human face, emptied of its smile, became perfectly, terribly attentive. The pleasant softness drained out of it and left something with no give in it at all, something that looked at High Speaker Oran the way I imagined the first night looked at the first fire, not with hatred. Hatred is hot and human and survivable, but with a cold, complete, unhurried interest. The interest of a thing that has just been given full permission to stop pretending. And her eyes did the sweep. The left-to-right sweep I had filed for 9 years as anxiety. Every exit, every delegate, every weapon, the Severeth in the high tier, the council, me. And this time when the sweep finished, the smile did not come back. The leash was simply, quietly off. The chamber felt it before anyone understood it. I told you the methane breathers stopped venting and the Kinnel stopped talking. What I did not tell you was the sound that filled the silence instead, which was the sound of 200 ancient and powerful delegates discovering, all at once, in the deepest and oldest part of themselves, an instinct they did not know they still carried. The instinct that says, something in this room can kill you, and it has just decided to look at you. The Severeth ambassador, Kresh, made a small, involuntary movement, a flinch, the first honest thing his delegation had done in the whole affair. Mara Quinn spoke, and here is the thing that I, the cataloger of catastrophes, find most difficult to convey. She did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. There was no fury in it, no breaking, none of the hot human passion our files had taught us to expect and to discount. Her voice was very level and very quiet, and it carried to every tier of that vast chamber precisely because everyone in it had gone so completely still. "You've made a mistake," she said, "and I want to be fair because the mistake is partly ours. We let you believe the smile was the truth. That was kind and it was wrong, and a lot of children just paid for our kindness." She paused, the half-breath pause, the sweep. "So I'm going to correct the record, not with a fleet. We don't have a fleet worth the name, and you all know it, and that's been the joke for 9 years. Something moved at the edge of her mouth, and for a horrible instant I thought the smile was returning, but it was not a smile. It was the shape a smile leaves behind when there is nothing kind underneath it. "The joke," she said, "is about to stop being funny." High Speaker Auron, who had governed the Conquered for 200 years, who had faced down the Vorth uprising and the collapse of the Third Spiral, made the error of his life. He spoke to her the way one speaks to a child who has forgotten its place. He told her to sit down. She looked at him for a long moment, and then she told the chamber what humanity had been doing for 9 years in the dark, with the dying heart of the galaxy that we had handed them as an insult. She told us about the lattice. "You gave us the lattice because none of you could fix it," she said, "and you couldn't fix it because you never tried to understand it, you only worshipped it. We understood it, all of it. Every gate, every node, every dead precursor subroutine you've been afraid to touch for 400,000 years. We didn't tell you because telling you would have meant rubbing your faces in it, and we didn't see the point. We just kept the lights on. Every gate you've jumped through in 9 years, every word you've sent to a world you love, every convoy that reached a colony before it starved, that was us. In the dark, smiling, saying thank you when you cut our rations." She let the silence do its work, and the silence was enormous. "You think you let us live here. You've been living because we let the lattice live. And those are not the same thing, and you are about to learn the difference." I want to record precisely what happened in the chamber then, because it has never happened before or since, and I do not believe it will happen again. The council did not respond with anger. The council did not respond with denial. The council, 200 of the oldest and proudest beings in the galaxy, sat in their high tiers in absolute silence and did the arithmetic. And one by one, tier by tier, I watched the arithmetic land. I watched them check their own memories against her words. I watched a Vorth admiral remember a gate that should have failed and did not. I watched a Kinnel elder remember a convoy that arrived against all odds. I watched the Severeth ambassador Kresh do the math on his own homeworld's 3 jump gates, every one of them in human reconstructed space, and I watched the color leave him. They believed her, not because she proved it, because the moment she said it, every one of them could feel, in the part of themselves that had gone still, that it was true. We had been carried. We had spent 9 years patronizing the arms that carried us. And Mara Quinn looked up at the Severeth, at Kresh, at the species that had murdered a ship full of doctors and children on the bet that the soft thing would stay soft. "You wanted to know what we are," she said, "all of you. 9 years you've been wondering behind the politeness. Well, here it is. You don't owe us tribute, you don't owe us fear. We never asked for either and we never will. The thing that was not a smile flickered again. We only asked you to be decent, and you couldn't manage it. So now you're going to find out what it costs to live in a galaxy that runs on human goodwill when the goodwill stops. She turned to High Speaker Auron, and she told him she was withdrawing the human core from the lattice, effective immediately. Every technician, every node, every dark and thankless station from the core to the outer veil, going home to mourn their dead. You wanted us to choose the gentle path, she said. We have been choosing it every single day for 9 years, and not one of you ever noticed, because the gentle path is invisible when it works. So let's try the other one for a little while. Let's see how you like the galaxy when we stop. And she walked off the speaking floor, and no one in that chamber of 200 ancient powers said a single word to stop her, because every instinct any of them had left was screaming that you do not, under any circumstances, reach for the thing that has just stopped smiling at you. I sat in my recording cell that night and I tried to file the day, and I could not. My famous memory had every detail and no category to put them in. I had spent 9 years cataloging a pet. I had no file for what I had actually been sitting beside. So I opened a new one, and at the top of it in the formal mode, I wrote the first honest line of my long and careful career. Reclassification of species H. sapiens. Prior designation, harmless. Prior designation rescinded. New designation pending. Note for the record, we did not domesticate them. They domesticated themselves and showed us the leash, and we called it a smile. I did not yet know how the story ended. None of us did. We only knew that the lights were about to go out, and that we had, with our own proud hands, sent away the only people in the galaxy who knew how to turn them back on. The galaxy went dark in stages, and the stages were a kind of education. The first day, almost nothing happened, and the council took false comfort from it. The lattice is vast and old, and it does not fail all at once. It fails the way a great body dies, the extremities first, the heart last. So on the first day the only news was a handful of minor gates in the outer veil going quiet, and the optimists in the high tiers said the humans were bluffing, that the core would lose its nerve, that softness always returns to softness. High Speaker Auron, to his credit, did not believe them. He had seen the face. He knew the smile was not coming back on its own. The second day, a translation matrix failed across the third spiral and 40 worlds lost the ability to speak to one another. Not violently. There was no explosion, no fleet, no enemy to rage against. There was simply a silence where there had been speech, the conversation of 40 worlds cut off mid-sentence, and no one left who knew how to reconnect it. The Kinil, who live and die by talk, began to panic first. The third day, the convoys stopped. This was the one that broke something open in the council, because the convoys had been so quiet, so reliable, so utterly taken for granted, that no one had understood they were a choice. Colonies on the edge of survival, worlds the humans had been feeding for years out of nothing but the refusal to watch a thing starve, found their supply run simply not arriving. And the council discovered with horror that they did not even know the routes. The humans had run them. The humans had always run them. The maps were in human heads, on human ships going home. By the fifth day, the Great Chamber was not a place of governance anymore. It was a place of fear. Delegates who had spent 9 years seated above the human liaison now stood in the speaking floor she had stood in, demanding that someone, anyone, do something. The Vorth offered to take the lattice by force, and were laughed at, because you cannot conquer a machine you do not understand from the people who are the only ones who do. The Severeth, whose ambassador Kresh had not spoken since the day of the smile, found their own 3 jump gates flickering, their own world drifting toward the dark they had so casually inflicted, and they understood at last the exact dimensions of the bet they had lost. And here is the thing I must record, because it is the heart of the whole account, the thing that makes humanity what it is, and not merely what we feared it was. In 5 days, the humans did not fire a single shot. They did not seize a single world. They did not demand tribute or surrender or revenge for the asterisk meridian. They simply went home and grieved, and let the galaxy feel the exact and precise shape of the hole they left. The most powerful species in the conquered wielded the only weapon that mattered themselves by withholding it. The predator awoke and looked at a galaxy it could have ended with a closed hand, and chose instead to do nothing at all and let the nothing speak. I have catalogued every kind of war. I had no file for a war fought entirely with absence. On the sixth day, High Speaker Oran did the only wise thing left to him. He went himself, alone, without delegation or ceremony, to the human enclave at the low edge of the conquered. He went to Mara Quinn, and because I am the cataloger, and because Oran knew the record had to be kept honestly now or it would never be honest again, he allowed me to come. The human enclave was small and warm and full of grief. They had set out images of the asterisk meridian asterisk dead, the doctors, the engineers, the children, and there were so many small human things around those images, flowers and food and folded paper and objects whose meaning I did not know, that I understood for the first time that I had never once in 9 years asked a human what they loved. I had catalogued the smile. I had never asked what the smile protected. Mara Quinn received the High Speaker of the conquered sitting on the floor among her dead, and she did not rise, and Oran did not ask her to. He sat down across from her on the same floor, the highest authority in the galaxy lowering himself to the height of a grieving woman, and I recorded it, and I will never forget it. I have come to understand, Oran said slowly, that we have been carried, for 9 years, by the people we seated lowest. Yes, Mara said. And that you could let us fall. Yes. Will you? And Mara Quinn looked at the old creature across from her, the ruler of the galaxy that had insulted her people for 9 years, and then asked them to be gentle about their own children's murder. And the thing I had been waiting for, the thing the whole chamber had braced against, finally happened. The smile came back. I cannot tell you the relief and the terror that warred in me when I saw it, because it was not the old smile. The old smile had been a mask, a kindness, a thing held up to make us comfortable. This smile had nothing held up behind it at all. This was the smile of a being who had shown us completely what she was, who had let us see the predator and count the exits and do the arithmetic of our own helplessness, and who was now, with full knowledge on both sides, choosing the gentle path anyway. Not because she was soft. We knew now that she was not. But because gentleness, when it is chosen by something that could choose otherwise, is the only kind of gentleness that means anything at all. No, she said. We won't let you fall. We're already going back. The core left an hour ago. The lattice will be whole by the end of the day. Oran stared at her. Then why? Because you needed to know, Mara said, and the smile did not waver, and it was the most frightening and most beautiful thing I have ever recorded. Not to threaten you, to free you. You spent 9 years afraid of the wrong thing. You thought the danger was that we might be weak, that we'd embarrass you, drag you down, fail. So you kept us low, kept us hungry, kept us in the dark, trying to manage a weakness that was never there. She gestured gently at the images of her dead. And it got these people killed, because the Severith read your contempt and believed it. You taught the whole galaxy that humans were safe to hurt, so I had to teach the whole galaxy the truth. Once, clearly, so it never has to be taught again. And the truth is, Oran said quietly, that you are the most dangerous species in the conquered. No, and here her voice changed and the grief came back into it, all of it. The whole weight of the asterisk meridian asterisk, and the predator and the mourner were the same creature in the same breath, and I finally understood that they always had been. The truth is that we're the most dangerous species in the conquered, and we spend every single day choosing not to be. That's not weakness. That was never weakness. That's the strongest thing in this galaxy, and you couldn't see it because it looks exactly like kindness. It looks exactly like a smile. She looked down at the small face of a human child in one of the images, and she touched the edge of it with one finger, and she was quiet for a long moment. "We'll keep the lights on. We always would have. We just needed you to know that it's a gift, not a duty, not a tribute we owe you for letting us exist. A gift, given freely. By people you've spent 9 years calling soft." High Speaker Orun, ruler of the galaxy, bowed his head to the human liaison on the floor of her enclave full of her dead. And I, the cataloger, recorded it. And then I did the thing I had come, in the end, to do. I asked her a question, the only one that had ever mattered that I had never once thought to ask. "What did the asterisk meridian asterisk carry?" I said. "The children, where were they going?" Mara Quinn looked at me, at the Sauron who had filed her smile as submission for 9 years, and she did not smile at all this time. She just told me. "Home," she said. "We'd found them a world, a green one in a system we'd reconnected. They'd never seen open sky. The whole trip, the doctors said, the kids kept asking if the sky on the new world would be the same color as the one in the pictures. They were going home to find out." She was quiet. "They never got to ask." And the cataloger of the Sauron, who does not build and does not fight and only watches and remembers, sat in a small warm room full of human grief and learned the last thing he would ever need to learn about the species we had called harmless. We had been right that the smile was a display. We had been right that it meant I am no threat. We had been wrong, completely and catastrophically wrong, about who it was for. The smile was never to reassure us. The smile was a promise the humans made to themselves, that no matter how much they were insulted, starved, condescended to, no matter how clearly they could see every exit and every throat in every room, they would keep choosing the gentle path. The smile was the predator's vow not to hunt, and we had spent 9 years mistaking the vow for the inability to break it. The lattice came back online that evening, exactly as she said it would, gate by gate, world by world, the conversation of 1,000 worlds resuming mid-sentence as though it had never stopped. The galaxy lit up again in the dark, and almost no one out there ever knew how close it had come, or who had let it go dark, or who had brought it back. That is the nature of human work. It is invisible when it succeeds. They prefer it that way. The Severith answered for the asterisk meridian in time by their own law and their own shame, with no human fleet ever rising against them, which was, in the end, the most damning verdict of all, that humanity did not consider them worth a war. Ambassador Kresh resigned and was never seen in the Conquered again. The children's green world is settled now. The sky there is, I am told, very nearly the color it was in the pictures. And I sit in my recording cell, the most honest cataloger the Sauron have ever produced, because I am the only one who learned his lesson at the right cost, and I keep the file. The reclassification I left pending the night of the smile, I have finally completed. I will read it to you now, and then I will be done, because it is the only thing I have ever written that I am certain is true. Species H. sapiens. Prior designation, harmless. Rescinded. Considered designation, apex predator. Rescinded, accurate but insufficient. Final designation, entered by the hand of the cataloger who watched the smile fade and lived to understand it. They are not the most dangerous species because of what they can destroy. Every powerful thing can destroy. They are the most dangerous species because of what they choose, every hour of every day not to. We mistook the choice for an inability. We mistook the leash for the nature of the animal. We mistook the smile for surrender. It was never surrender. It was mercy. And mercy, freely given by something that could choose otherwise, is the only true power in this galaxy. The rest of us merely have teeth. They have teeth, and they have decided not to use them, and they smile at us while they make that decision, every single day forever. Treat them gently, not because they are soft, because they are not, and because the gentleness they show us is the most precious thing any species has ever offered another, and we very nearly threw it away because it came wrapped in a smile. I closed the file. The lattice hums in the walls, steady and bright and whole, kept alive in the dark by hands that ask for nothing. And somewhere out there, on a green world under a familiar sky, the people who hold the galaxy's heart in their small, soft hands are, I have no doubt at all, smiling. I finally understand what it means. And it is the most reassuring and most terrifying thing I know.